From Unity Church of Christianity in Houston, Texas, this is The Awakened Life with Reverend Howard Caesar. Unity is a non-denominational Christian church providing a positive, practical, and progressive approach to Christianity. Let's join the service in progress with the Reverend Howard Caesar.
So there was this guy, and he went to the horse races. And he happened to notice a Catholic priest was there, and he knew he was a Catholic priest. He had the collar on. And he noticed that the Catholic priest was in and around where the horses were before the races. And he just had a seat where he could see that. And so he noticed that the Catholic priest actually went up to one horse, and he thought, blessed the horse, gave it a blessing. So he watched him by, and golly, that horse won the race. And so he watched him some more, and every horse that he blessed won the race. So he started betting, and all afternoon he betted, and man, he made out. And then it came the last race of the day, and he went up to this one really old, kind of decrepit horse, and he just wondered, really doubted, could this be a horse that won? But he had been right all day long, so he put all of his earnings on that horse. And they ran the race, and the horse was last, came in last. And so he went and sought out the priest, and he said, I've been watching you all day, and you were right. And every time you blessed the horse, it won. What happened? What went wrong? And the guy says, oh, you Protestants, you never know the difference between a blessing and the last rites. So we are here to learn. Maybe not that, but something is here in content. Today we are continuing in a series on spiritual principles to live by. This is part 2. We've made the point that many or most organizations really have a stated purpose, vision, and a statement of values as well, and that this helps them with their focus and really their effectiveness as an organization, and that we individually as persons would be wise to have our own sense of purpose and vision and a set of values by which we live, that would help in our own focus and effectiveness in life and living as well. I mentioned that Unity Church about 10 or 12 years ago reformulated our purpose, vision, and values. Not all that much, but we wanted to kind of wordsmith it so that it would be appropriate not only for us as an organization, but those values and purpose would be something that an individual could incorporate into their life, that they could take with them, and they could see the significance and the meaning of it as well. And so I will repeat just for today, one more time for those who were not here perhaps last Sunday, our purpose. And actually, if you'll see it, it's on the screens today. But our purpose is who we are being in the world. Who are you being in the world? And that's the question. Our purpose is to be an empowering force for spiritual evolution, creating conscious lives and an awakened world. So whether it's a church or an individual, it starts with addressing the idea of who we are and who we want to be, and getting clear about that, who we want to be in the world. And whether it's for the church or an individual, this is something to address. And ideally, we want to be an empowering force, as opposed to a disempowering force. We want to be an empowering force for spiritual evolution, not de-evolution, devolving. We want to be about being conscious as opposed to being unconscious and asleep. We want to be awake and aware spiritually in living our lives. And in that way, we become more of a contribution to the people around us, the life that we're living, and our life goes better as well. So this series, as we say, is on values. We have 5 values in the church, and these values and purpose and vision we recite and share out loud as a board of directors at every monthly meeting. They are important to us. We seek to live by them. And so they have value for us. We say that a value is something that we stand for, right? It's basically an ideal that we grab hold of and we seek to live from. It's something we don't want to forget. We don't want to let die within our consciousness, because it is essentially what can define us. It's what we live from. It's a standard, if you will, a set of standards that we live by. and hold as important and in high regard. And so it has worth and usefulness to us. Quite often our values are rooted in spiritual truth. That is usually the case. Thoreau said, "Rather than love, than money, than fame, give me truth," because he felt that truth, spiritual truths, really undergird it all. And that's where his values wanted to come from. We pointed out last week that a person has to make many decisions during the course of their life. And some of them are hard and difficult decisions. And that quite often those decisions can be made easier if we have a set of values. It kind of steers us, it corrals us, and we're clear about where we are and who we are being in the world. Last week we covered the first value, which was about oneness. Okay, and it states, I'd like to have that up on the board if we would. It states, we live from our oneness with God and each other and experience the interconnectedness of all life. Okay, and we mentioned that this could be made into an affirmation where you take ownership. I live from my oneness with God and I experience the interconnectedness of all life. It's a very powerful statement to make. It's one that is worthy of consideration. Unity, the word, means oneness. And that's what unity stands for, is for oneness with God, oneness with each other, oneness with all creation. What could be more important than that? I shared last Sunday how this idea of oneness is what drew me to the ministry and to unity, among many of its other principles. But the whole idea that we all see that there is polarity and division in the world, and what the world needs more than anything is really those people who are living from a consciousness of oneness, and that energy itself can offset all the division that's out there. And therefore we are making a contribution by the work that we do in our own individual consciousness. It affects our families, the people we work with, and really the world as it contributes to the collective energy. So it's very important, an awakened awareness into the interconnectedness of all life. Now, spiritual masters and teachers down through time have all essentially said the same thing. In simplistic form, man's greatest problem is separation. Is separation from God, which then leads to separation from others, from themselves, from all of creation in various levels. And that the solution to separation is oneness. And so oneness is what basically completes us as spiritual beings. And last week we covered the ideal of oneness quite thoroughly. And we put before you all the many things that Jesus shared around oneness, which was a lot. So you got real clear that this was an important value that his ministry and his teaching was about. And so this week, however, we're on to the next value. And so the next value that we hold is important too in relation to being an empowering force for spiritual evolution. I believe it's up on the screens, and the second value states, we uplift all people in their spiritual growth, and we apply the principles taught by Jesus the Christ and embrace the universal truths of other faith traditions. So to begin with, we are here to lift. We're here to uplift, okay? We're not to push down as we live our lives, and certainly we as a church are here to uplift. We're here to inspire all people into spiritual growth, transformation. Uplifting people is a very important part of our ministry, and to uplift them into higher levels of spiritual consciousness. And so unity has a sort of additional statement of purpose that I like to share. Sometimes I do at the beginning of the service, and that is that we are here to teach, to love, and to inspire people into being all they're created to be. And so we're inspiring them, we're teaching them, we're loving them, we're nurturing them into higher places and dimensions. How do we uplift people? Well, it's through spiritual principles that we teach and highlight, okay? We teach, love, and inspire people into living these spiritual principles that can make a difference. The teachings that Jesus the Christ taught. And we also, we talk about the teachings or truths of other faith traditions. There are those that we all could draw from, whatever the path may be. Love, for instance, is spoken of in most all of the major spiritual paths. But Jesus was the great teacher, and he was the way shower, and he was a great model of spiritual principles. And one of the things that we make important is that you understand when we're talking about spiritual principles, we're also talking about spiritual laws, that they're synonymous. And a law is a law, okay? And some laws have tended to be, in the spiritual aspect, the do's and the don'ts, the shalls and the shall nots. Some laws, we have in our world out there that we have to abide by in order for there to be order. If you drive a vehicle, there are laws to abide by. There are speed limits. There are things you do and you don't do. And some people do and don't do, and others, there are consequences, right? There are consequences. Let me tell you a story about myself and driving. Diane and I, some years ago, were running late, coming to a worship service. I was to speak, we were doing an 8 o'clock service at the time. And so we live in Sugar Land, and it's about a 30-minute drive. And so we got a late start. So I was concerned about being late. And I was kind of in that fog of, and there was construction going on 59 when we were coming up 59. So I was going over that speed limit for construction, even though there weren't workers out there on a Sunday. And I was thinking about my lesson. And all of a sudden, you know how you just get this bolt of insight that says, oops, I think I'm doing something wrong? And it's just, I got this jolt and looked up in the rearview mirror, and sure enough, there was the red light from afar off coming. And so I pulled over and got my, driver's license and insurance out. And the policeman came up to the window, and I said, sir, let me tell you, I'm a minister. And I have an 8 o'clock service that I'm late for, and so I just kind of went unconscious about that and thinking about God and the lesson I was going to be giving. And so I guess I was in a hurry, and I'm really, really sorry. And I thought he'd be a good Samaritan. I was a minister. It was a Sunday morning, and he said, oh, I get you're in a hurry. I can write this up really quick. And so he wrote me up. So I broke the law, and there are consequences. It doesn't, it shouldn't matter who you are. It shouldn't matter what the circumstances. It shouldn't matter. And that's the way it is. And a universal spiritual principle and a universal law is like that. It applies. It's reliable. It is always, wherever you may be. It's like a principle of addition. 2 + 2 = 4. And wherever you go, whatever time of day, it will always be a principle that works for you. And it'll be there. And if you don't understand the principle, you'll get the wrong answer. There are consequences always in laws and principles. So Jesus said, I come not to destroy the law, but I come to fulfill it. Not to abolish it, but to fulfill it. And he was referring at that time to the law that were the existing scriptures of the day, which is basically the Torah, the book of Moses, the first 5 books of the Bible. And he was wanting to basically reveal that there was a next level in spiritual consciousness of understanding laws and principles. And so to this point, all the laws were mostly about the doing and not doing, the shalls and the shall nots. And so there were endless references to that in aspects of the Torah. If you read through Leviticus, it's just that. And so it's telling you about, how to pray and not to pray, what to eat, how to prepare the food. Tremendous detail on this. So Jesus then tells us, comes up behind all of that, and you can read about what he said. It's in Matthew 15. He says it's not about what goes into the mouth, it's about what comes out of the mouth. Okay? And he says it's not what goes in that defiles you, it's what proceeds out of the mouth. So it's no longer just about food and how you prepare it and the kind of food, but he's saying it's about the words that come forth, and those words come forth by virtue of your consciousness, about your inner world. And so he was introducing humanity to the importance of the inner world. He said, you've heard it said that you shall not kill. But I say, whoever is angry with his brother shall be liable to the judgment. What's the judgment? The judgment really is spiritual laws and principles. He was never espousing a God that delivered rewards and punishment. He was always introducing us to spiritual principle and spiritual laws. And he followed that up by talking about the nature of God and making clear the nature of God. And it's there that he said, ask and it shall be given unto you. Seek and you shall find. Knock and the door shall be opened unto you. And then right after that, he talks about the idea of what a man, he says, what man is there of you who, if his son asks for bread, will give him a stone, or who asks for a fish would give him a serpent? And he says, if then you know to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give good things to them that ask? And so he's establishing the fact that it is the Father's good pleasure to give, and to give good all the time. But there is a law and there are principles that we can get out of harmony, and therefore other things show up that are far less than good. And we're a part of that creative process. And so Jesus has basically shifted the focus from just doing and not doing to an inner awareness of what it is that is going on inside of you and being responsible for that. And so he stresses the laws of consciousness and the laws of mind. And so the question becomes, is it safe to walk the streets of your mind after dark? Okay. All right? And Jesus even challenged the scribes and the Pharisees. He says, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites. He said, you have omitted the weightier matters of the law. The weightier matters of the law is about the inner world. Everything emerges from inside out, okay? And so one of the most important spiritual principles that one can value is this law of mind action, because there are so many offshoots of the law of mind, and it's spoken of in many ways. You've heard it as said, thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. As in mind, so in manifestation. As within, so without. As above, so below. As ye sow, so shall ye reap. Like attracts like. What gets your attention gets you. The law of cause and effect, the law of action and reaction. First the impression, then the expression. As a man thinketh, so is he. As a woman thinketh, so is she. There are laws and principles upon which this whole universe functions, and we must learn and understand and come into harmony, or we'll suffer the consequences. It's just like the law of gravity. It doesn't matter whether you're a prince or a pauper. If you jump off or fall off a cliff, the consequences are the same. Mind is a creative cause, and it brings about our reality in life. Change your mind, you change your life, as you've heard. And for life to get better, then there must be a constant stream of new thought and thinking, better thought, truer thought, to ensure a progression of consciousness. Always seek to be moving forward in your mind. Learn to train your mind, to cultivate the bigger, the better, the superior thought in all matters that come up before you. We are told, overcome evil with good. And what it's saying is overcome the less than good with a focus on that which is good, what can be, what is possible, what is the truth here that's beyond the facts. The mind tends to be biased oftentimes toward the negative, unless we take charge, unless we consciously begin to manage the energies of our mind. Every person is basically their own architect, their own designer, their own builder and creator of life. And there is a truer and a higher way of thinking about everything. And in this way we can prevent wasted mental energy, and we can produce the results that we want. And the things that come up in our lives, whether they're events and happenings and experiences and conditions and circumstances and all this. These are really the results. They're the results, and those results can vary depending upon the quality of what is going on in one's mind. Jesus spoke about spiritual laws and principles rather succinctly, and if you went to Luke chapter 6, you can read through that, and he gives us there the golden rule, which is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And he says basically there's no way around that. And he's saying it may not be easy, but still you've got to do what might be difficult, because he says, what's the big deal if you love those who love you? What's the big deal if you do good to those who are already doing good to you? Okay? You have to get beyond that with the laws and the principles. Okay? That's important. And so he then goes into a barrage of laws that are rooted in the law of mind action. And it's there that he's talking about doing good for even those who don't do good for you. And so he says, here's the law. Be therefore merciful, as your Father also is merciful. In other words, take on the characteristics of the divine through the laws and principles that you are living. He says right after that, judge not, you will not be judged. Condemn not, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you shall be forgiven. Give, and it shall be given unto you. And he goes on to say, in fact, good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over. And he says, for the law is, he concludes all this, for with the same measure that you use, it will be measured back to you. It's that simple. It's a principle. It's a law. And so we're here to remember that. We're here to hold value around that. And in spite of all that, yes, people will continue to be faced with challenges and problems because we grow through them, and we will still die, and there will be people around us that die, and there will be people around us that have difficult problems. The world will have problems, but these things will not intimidate us because we understand truth, we understand principle, we understand spiritual law about all of these things, and they will not overtake us. In fact, we'll come to know that death is never a defeat. Death is a part of life. It's an experience we all have. And so it can often be considered and viewed as a healing. But there's an importance to go beyond just intellectually knowing a principle. You have to take it to heart. And feeling is very important, the feeling nature. That's where the energy lies that gives the idea of a truth or principle its power. There's a story once fairly well known, an authenticated case about a Madame Bayer of France. And it was recorded in the archives of the medical department of Lourdes, France. And this lady was blind, and the optic nerves had atrophied. And so she visited Lourdes and had a miraculous healing. And McCall's magazine, 1955, November actually, there was an article written by a lady, Ruth Cranston, and she was a person who investigated these different healings at Lourdes. And she would investigate, and investigated this one in particular, and she wrote an article, and she wrote this. She said, quote, at Lourdes, this lady regained her sight incredibly, with the optic nerves still lifeless and useless, as several doctors could testify after repeated examinations. And then it goes on to explain a month later, upon re-examination, it was found that the seeing mechanism had been restored to normal. But at first, they said it was like seeing with dead eyes. But they pointed out, which was interesting, that Madame Bayer was not healed by the waters of the shrine at Lourdes, but by her own subconscious mind, which responded to her belief. Belief is a thought, okay? And a thought executes itself automatically if it is joined with tremendous energy and conviction. Okay, undoubtedly, Madame Bayer had a sense of expectancy and great faith that she brought to the intelligence. And there is an intelligence that created the eye, and the intelligence that created your eye also has the intelligence to fix it, to recreate it, okay, to restore it, according to your belief. So it is done unto you. There is a Bible story that parallels this, in which Jesus had blind men come to him, and Jesus he asked them the question of these blind men, do you believe I'm able to do this? And they said yes. And then he touched their eyes and said to them, according to your faith, be it done unto you. And their eyes opened, and Jesus then said, go and don't tell anyone. And the question, do you believe I'm able to do this, was Jesus' way of engaging their mind and seeing where they were in terms of faith and belief. Jesus never took credit for anything he did. He always said, it is not me, but the Father within that doeth the work. And the Father within that he's talking about is the working of the law and the spiritual principle within an individual that's doing the work. All right? And so when he said, according to your faith be it done unto you, he was appealing to the cooperation of the mind and heart of the individuals that he was seeking to take into the realm of possibility for a healing. When Jesus told them to tell no one, it was basically, be careful of as you go now with your healing. There are people who are skeptical and unbelieving, and they'll talk you out of it and potentially undo your healing, because everything is consciousness. There are principles and laws. There are principles of healing, there are principles of prosperity, there are spiritual principles to prayer, to loving relationships, to happiness, to the fulfillment of our desires in all realms. And the subconscious mind accepts the verdicts that we give it and the conclusions that we draw with our conscious mind. William James, the father of American psychology, said the power to move the world is in your subconscious mind. Ralph Waldo Emerson said, man is what he thinks all day long. We are always accessing universal laws and principles through our mind and our heart. Whether we're aware of it or not, they're there. So the mind embraces an idea. The heart brings a feeling with the nature of faith and expectancy and conviction and belief. And Jesus made that clear. He said, whatsoever things you desire, when you pray, believe that you receive them and you shall have them. Most all of our consciousness is filled with fears. When we have something come up, it's so hard to get past the fear and into the energy of the conviction. I know, but that's the law, and that's the principle, and those are the things we must work on. As water takes the shape of a pipe, it flows through. The life principles in you flow through you according to your thoughts. Unity values these universal laws and principles, and we're here to teach, love, and inspire you into living them and making them the forefront and what are the values that you hold. So I invite you all to join with me in affirming now, in a first-person form, our value, our second value on spiritual principles. Repeat after me. I uplift myself, and all people in spiritual growth as I apply the principles taught by Jesus the Christ, and I embrace the universal truths of other faith traditions. So be it. Go be a light in the world. God bless you.
Thank you for joining us for today's message. We invite you to be with us again next Sunday. At Unity, we believe that God's presence of love and goodness is everywhere, and that life is meant to be good. You can find out more about Unity and our teachings at unityhouston.org.
Are you currently church shopping, looking for that right church for you or your family? Perhaps you've been looking and been turned off by organized religion. It happens. Let me suggest you try Unity Church. We are a positive, practical, progressive approach to Christianity. Many who have found us have said, I didn't know there was a church that taught what I always believed. Let's be honest, people shop for clothes, good restaurants, and the right church that feeds them spiritually. If you're seeking a spiritual truth beyond tradition, try Unity Church. Come join us.